Hey everybody! Today is Friday, February the 19th, and this is the 33rd edition of Book Fun Friday. Welcome. So the young adult novel I'm going to be talking about today is titled The Black Kids, and it's written by the author Christina Hammonds. This is a continuation of our study of books written by Black authors that feature Black characters in honor of Black History Month. So I'm excited to talk to you about this book today. So technically this book, The Black Kids, is considered historical fiction, and this is why. It's set during 1992 in Los Angeles. And if you remember what was going on in Los Angeles, specifically April into May, it was about a 6-day period from end of April to beginning of May. There was rioting and marching and looting happening in Los Angeles that came about as a result of what happened to Rodney King. Now, Rodney King, we all know, was violently assaulted on film. The police officers who assaulted him were put on trial and were acquitted, and then the resulting fallout of that acquittal was the marching and the rioting and the looting, that kind of thing that happened for several days afterwards. Well, all of that is the backdrop for this book, The Black Kids. The protagonist of this book is a young woman whose name is Ashley, and Ashley is a senior in high school. It's almost the end of her senior year of high school. So, you know, she's doing what seniors do toward the end of their senior year. She cuts a little bit of school. She's got big-time senioritis, waiting to hear from all of her colleges and see where she gets accepted and what her plans are going to be. And she's at that point in her life where she's really doing a lot of reflecting. She has 3 best friends, Heather, Courtney, and Kimberly, and these 4 girls have been besties since elementary school. But Ashley has recently started to really examine their friendship and really question whether or not they are actually true friends. And then things erupt with the Rodney King case and the subsequent marches and riots and that kind of thing. And because Ashley is the one Black girl in her group of friends, she sees things differently than her friends do. Now, Ashley is just as well-to-do, wears just as nice clothes, has aspirations for college just like they do, lives in a lovely home just like they do. But there definitely are differences. And all of a sudden, given everything that's happening in LA, when the story opens, those differences become magnified. And that furthers Ashley in her quest to examine the validity of her friendship with these girls. So I'm going to read, like I always do, I'm going to share a section from the book. This is chapter 2, so it's actually pretty early in the book, and I need to set up the part here that I'm going to read. So Ashley and her girlfriends, and then a couple of their guy friends, have decided that they're going to cut school that day. And not only are they going to cut school, one of their friends says, hey, there's this house down the street from me that's under construction. They're doing work on it, putting addition on this house, but they have this amazing swimming pool in the back part of the house that's just sitting there. It's not being used. The family's not living in the house right now because it's under renovation. We should go to this construction site where they're adding this thing onto this house and sneak in and use their pool. And he assures them that the homeowners aren't there, that they won't get in any trouble, that they can go and use this pool, no problem. So they do. They climb through the construction fence and they all jump in the pool and they play Marco Polo and they splash around and they're having a fantastic time. They pass a beer around until they're caught. And suddenly they hear the sound of a construction worker shouting out to them like, hey, what are you guys doing here? And they get up to run away. And then, unfortunately, after they run away, they are stopped by a police officer on the street. Now, you can imagine, with the tensions being what they are, given the current situation, 1992 Los Angeles riots, um, they would probably have specific reactions to being confronted by a police officer, or at least Ashley would. Um, but when they are confronted by this police officer, their responses are actually quite different. And you're going to see that exemplified here in this section that I'm going to read. So, again, this is Ashley with her friends, and they are running away from this pool that they just they did breaking and entering to get in and use. The squad car pulls up alongside us as we approach Courtney's house. We received a complaint, the officer says. Hi, Officer Bradford, Kimberly says, looking at his name tag. She puts on that voice she uses to get boys to do what she wants. Unbothered, she twists her hair into a rope and wrings it out, so the water drips onto the concrete. He watches the water as it falls. The rest of us stand silently behind her. Trespassing's a serious offense, he says. The officer isn't too much older than we are. Officer Bradford looks to be about 20 or so, brown-haired, with a whisper of a jawline. He squeaks and then overcorrects with too much bass. We're not that close, but we're also not that far from where the Rodney King beating occurred. I wonder if this officer knows those officers. Maybe he works out with them, plays basketball, or does community fundraisers with them. These men who laughed afterward about beating a man until they fractured his skull, damaged his kidneys, and scrambled his brains. I think there's been some confusion, Kimberly says. My dad's totally friends with the owner, and he said it was okay if we used the pool while he was away. He doesn't buy it. But Kimberly's leaned over the window and all her beauty is spilling into his car. He pulls his eyes away and looks past her at the rest of us. My grandma Opal used to say that white kids wear their youth like body armor. Bradford's eyes land on me, and he squints as though he's found the root of our hooliganism. You can call him if you like, Kimberly offers. Instead, he makes us sit in a row on the curb. Michael's legs, that's one of their friends who's with them, Michael's legs are hairy and pale next to mine. The burn above his ears is getting worse. He crosses his eyes and sticks his tongue out at me. A Mercedes speeds around the corner. That guy was definitely speeding, Heather says. That's another of her friends. That's a real danger to the neighborhood, officer. Officer Bradford ignores her. You been drinking? He sniffs the air around us. No, we say in chorus. You been smoking? No. Aren't you supposed to be in school, he says. We're seniors. Truancy is against the law, he says. It is? Driver's licenses and school IDs, he says, now. He reaches for Michael's first. I don't have any ID on me, Michael shrugs. He's definitely lying, and Bradford definitely knows it. Bradford asks Heather next, and she gestures at her bikini top. Doesn't exactly go with the outfit, she says. Officer Bradford points to me and reaches his hand out. You. I am not going to risk lying to a police officer. I pass my ID and license over to him with a slight tremble in my hand. I still had braces in my school ID photo. I used alternate colors on each tooth so that my smile was a rainbow. Oh, crap, Kimberly whispers. I'm calling your school, he says. And he does. Everything would have been fine if Ash wasn't with us, Kimberly says, laughing. as we walked back to her place afterward. Otherwise, we would have totally gotten away with it. "'Cause you're black," she says, by way of explanation. Sometimes she says black, like it's this really funny, dirty word. "Yeah, I got it," I say. The first time I remember one of my parents being pulled over by a cop, I was 8. The day before, my mother had brought home a brand new convertible, white with tan interior, like a pair of buttery leather gloves against your skin. We had a girls' day, just the two of us, and she put the top down so that the wind blew about our faces, and I reached up and out and tried to catch the sky in my fingertips. It felt a little like flying. My fingernails had been painted the pink of the inside of a seashell at the spa, same as my mother's, and the two Vietnamese spa owners had laughed and shouted across the squeaky leather chairs at each other as they pushed back our cuticles. My mother and I were laughing, our hair undone in the wind, when we saw the flashing lights in our rearview mirror. The officer was younger than my mother, with the same wispy blonde goatee he must have had in high school. He looked like a bullied kid who had turned bully, the kind of kid who'd been too big, too poor, or too dumb, and was now more than happy to pull over anybody he deemed too anything. In our case, too black. "Why are you pulling me over?" my mother had asked. Her hair looked a little crazy, and she smoothed it down quickly. "What are you doing here?" he asked. "I live here, just a few miles up the road." She recited our address. "What apartment number?" "None. It's a house. Is all this necessary?" she said. "There's no plates on your car." "That's because it's brand new. I just bought it." "License and registration, please." She slowly and carefully reached into the glove compartment for the little folder with her new car paperwork and insurance, announcing everything she was doing as she did it. And then she passed it over to him along with her license. He made a big show of radioing everything in, hand resting on his gun, which hung right by my mother's head. Instead of staring over at her, I kept staring down at my new pink nails. I was afraid to look up. When the voice on the other end finally confirmed ownership, he looked disappointed. Then he quickly discarded us like a Christmas toy come New Year's. "Have a good day, ma'am," he had said. "You too, officer," my mother had said, smiling. But when she went to turn the key in the ignition, her hands were trembling. She rolled up the windows and pulled the convertible top up so that the car grew small and dark and our heads no longer touched the open sky. And again, this is titled The Black Kids, and it's written by Christina Hammonds Reed. Well, guys, thank you as always for watching. I do appreciate you so much. Continue taking care of yourselves. Continue being well. In the meantime, I will just look forward to seeing you next Friday for episode 34 of Book Phone Friday. Bye.